What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Bond's Apartment. I, of course, am Luke. As usual, this is my favorite thing to say. Fun video. They're all fun. But what makes this one fun? We're talking about Brosnan, and I've got two of my favorite people joining me. Normally, I'll do this big, long spiel, but we're just going to bring them in. We've got Ryan, and we've got David. Gentlemen, thank you for doing this.
It's
Happy to be here.
my pleasure. It's always a joy to chat with you fellas.
You guys look great.
Oh, thank you.
You look
Thank
great.
you.
We've got I think it's a various levels of beard growth. I've got like shadow. Ryan's got a little more. David's got quite a nice beard, very trimmed. He's got a gun. He's ready.
I do. Here, pull out for a second. Only for Luke do I do this. But if you pull out, I've got the tuxedo shirt that Brosnan wore. I don't know why. You'll have to talk about the topic in a second. And yes, I do have a gun in this
Nice.
holster, which is not the most comfortable thing sitting down.
No, I believe that. But you look great.
Do I have enough buttons undone? Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
This is
More.
your and this is foreshadowing because this isn't going to be, this video is about the Brosnan era. This video is about how it's shaped our Bond fandom. I know from various conversations with both of you gentlemen that it's a key aspect to our Bond fandom. And this is not foreshadowing. I know David's favorite Bond film is Tomorrow Never Dies, which he is somewhat cosplaying right now. So I love the this is
I
very
was 10
meta.
years old when I found out that it's my favorite Bond film, but it is my favorite Brosnan Bond film.
That's what I meant to say.
But that's why this is going to be fun. Shenanigans galore are what is.
You know how many times he's done that to me? I was like, you know what? It's my damn turn. So many. I remember we did a video on, I think either Brosnan style on one of his films or Pierce, and no, I had to or Pierce. See, Jesus, either Craig or Brosnan, and I did it from a hotel office in Florida. And David and I told David I had a really hard stop. So he created this whole thing where he and I were talking, and then he'd remove me and put an image of me being carried away as if I was in Quantum of Solace being thrown into a garbage can.
It was great.
Oh, that's perfect. You just splayed out like Mathis.
It looked good. It looked good. So let's jump into this, gents.
Okay.
So what I wanted to do, and like I said, it's not what's your favorite Brosnan film, what's this, that, the other. It is, like I said, we've talked at length about Brosnan, and there's so many different videos and podcasts about Brosnan and the things that he brought to the series, the things that he brought to the character. But I wanted to pick both of your brains as to why, for the two of you in particular, was it such a pivotal tenure within this 60 plus years of this franchise. So David, I'll start with you because we've talked about Tomorrow Never Dies. We talked about Brosnan, but one of the things I wanted to bring up with you in particular, you actually joined, I believe it was either Lorenzo and I or Jake and I at the time. I can't remember, but we did a whole podcast about Bond mannerisms.
Oh, yeah.
Did something like that really come to the forefront with you with Brosnan? Like, was it much more obvious that you kind of wanted to emulate his mannerisms rather than Roger or Sean or George or Tim?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny when you talk about the entry point with Brosnan and my relationship with James Bond. It's probably more accurate to say re-entry point, because I was a Bond fan very young, fell away from it, got involved with other things, Star Wars, eventually, girls,
Drugs.
but so many
Hard drugs.
Riding the dragon.
That was a rough time for the.
It was a rough time, but I think the reason I call it a re-entry is because as a young executive, I was looking constantly for somebody to pattern myself off of. I mean, there were no great role models that I could find that where I'm like, I'm going to be dressing in a suit. and I'm going to be doing some very adult things. This was like my first, young executive thing in my early 30s, late 20s. And I started to look to James Bond. And I remember seeing GoldenEye, and that didn't do it for me. For some reason, I saw GoldenEye and I'm like, oh, that's right, James Bond. Because the Dalton era is just kind of back then washed over me. But with Brosnan, I really started to getting into it. It wasn't until 1997, I'll never forget it, the poster. It was just the poster of Tomorrow Never Dies. I started to get really curious, and I'm like, I'm just again thinking like, oh, why didn't I use James Bond as a template? And the trailer came out for Tomorrow Never Dies. So the movie, I haven't even seen the movie yet, and I
Right.
saw Brosnan, and there was such a sophomore year comfort to him. The swarminess, the cool, the way he moved, the one-liners, the way he had this aplomb of just being very natural in any situation. Even before I saw the clothes or got connected with like, watches and things like that, I said, this is the guy. Like,
Yeah.
this is the guy that I'm going to rob parts and pieces from. And I will say, my first relationship with Brosnan was almost being a mina bird, like macking off of the way he moved and the way he talked. I knew in my head that I didn't look anything like him, especially back then when I was kind of this atrophied, you know, young executives, more dough than flesh. Um, I knew I didn't look like him, but I knew that I could act like him. So you're right. I mean, long way of saying, I think it was his mannerisms and his suaveness that I think I could own.
So you actually observed Brosnan as Bond to benefit your professional career.
I did.
Like
I did.
you wanted to carry yourself in X way because of how he carried
It
himself.
exactly, and in GoldenEye, I remember this one move, and we all talk about it as Bond fans, but the humans out there probably don't, is when he's on that, yacht and he opens the door. That's right, he does this, and it's a very
Yeah, yeah,
stage
yeah.
thing to do. Stage actors have, and they have to, right? Because they're a little tiny person trying to fill the giant stage, so they're big arm movements, and I started to do that more and more in a room full of people, and it wasn't to shout, "Hey, look at me." It was these sort of gestures and big things. And that's also when I started to come into my own of like not being shy and storytelling and going into a room of unknown people and being able to survive. Because I'm like, what would Bond do? Bond would walk into a room full of baddies and beautiful women and feel at home. Why wouldn't I? Why couldn't I? What is what's the damage that could be done? There is no
Yeah,
damage. So
yeah,
yes, I started to adopt all those things for work.
yeah. So Ryan, let me ask you this. David touched on kind of the sophomore outing of Pierce. Do you feel like, because I know you and I both like Goldeneye, we've talked in length about Goldeneye, but do you feel like, and to kind of piggyback off David's reply, with all of the Remington Steele stuff and then having to wait, and then he finally gets Goldeneye, maybe had a little bit extra pressure and he kind of tried to fit the mold of what had come before him. Did you also feel like watching Tomorrow Never Dies and then even In a World Is Not Enough that he had more of like I'm going to bring more of myself into this now. Like I want to bring my own mannerisms. I want to bring Pierce into this character rather than emulating Sean or Roger or whomever.
I think so. I think so. For me, Tomorrow Never Dies was also the film that got me interested in Pierce Brosnan. I share that with David very strongly. I was obviously coming at it from a different perspective, but I saw in Brosnan this very striking figure that embodied a lot of contrasts of what a man could be. He resembled something of my father, who was a businessman who wore suits,
Mm-hmm.
all
Yep.
two guy, very handsome, very dashing figure, obviously as a formative figure for me in terms of what I saw myself aspiring to be. But Pierce Brosnan took that to a level in with the Tomorrow Never Dies campaign. The poster that David is describing is
Mm.
etched in my brain because I remember being young and seeing that at the Cineplex and attaching myself to that. And so I saw Tomorrow Never Dies before I saw Goldeneye. Goldeneye was actually a catch up for me. I saw Tomorrow Never Dies, I saw The World Was Not Enough, and Goldeneye was kind of a distant third.
Yeah.
And I think at the time, I was excited to see Goldeneye. If you talked to me at different points over the years, I would have said Pierce Brosnan and sometimes was his best in Goldeneye. But I've come to the feeling that he's really his best in Tomorrow Never Dies and The World Is Not Enough in different aspects, because he is more relaxed, a little bit more free to play. I think Pierce Brosnan is a very gifted actor with dialogue when he really feels he can like play around with it and the tonality of dialogue and feel like he's relaxed. And in Goldeneye, you don't feel that he ever fully relaxes into the role in a way that ultimately slightly hinders that film for me. I think he's still a very striking presence in Goldeneye, but there's something about the effortless charm of a relaxed Pierce Brosnan that just feels so classically Bondian in its effortless confidence. And
Ryan, how
Mm.
old were you when you saw Tomorrow Never Dies?
I was in 1997, I was 11, so I would have seen it when I was 12 when it hit VHS or so,
So
when Dad bought it.
I do think that's an important distinction for us to all talk about time and
Mhm.
when we saw and when we encountered Brosnan. Because for me, I was in my early vocational business stage trying to find a representation. Whereas Ryan, you're looking at action heroes. You're 11, 12
Right.
years old, just
Sure.
trying to connect that way.
Oh, 100%. Maybe you remember this, David, because if anybody would, I had the TV guide with him in the all black outfit doing the gun pose like this.
Oh, yeah.
And I had that and I treasured it. I had what was it? Was it the Starlog magazine or something like that had it and
Probably.
went through and promoted it?
Hmm.
I was obsessed with the image of Pierce Brosnan. It just kind of glommed onto my consciousness in a way that just totally made sense for me. And that was the reason I wanted to see this film. My dad, who was a Connery guy, he had seen all the Connery movies in their first run at Grauman's Chinese Theater in LA. He was an LA
Nice.
kid.
Wow.
When he saw Tomorrow Never Dies, that was the first time he felt like his Bond had returned. He was one of those guys who had seen the original Connery run, kind of checked out over the Moore and Dalton years. And when he saw Tomorrow Never Dies, he was lukewarm on Goldeneye, but when he saw Tomorrow Never Dies, he was like, my Bond is back. He was euphoric about it. And that was kind of what kicked off my relationship with my dad and Bond together, kind of like sharing Bond between the two of us as that happened. So it was very special for me, and Brosnan looms very large for me as a result. He was a major figure in my childhood fantasies.
So you must not have played Goldeneye before seeing films.
My timeline is hazy on that, to be honest, because it was my friend. It was my friend who lived across the street during that same year that Tomorrow Never Dies came out, who had the Nintendo 64 and had Goldeneye. I conflate them as one and the same event, where I was becoming aware of Tomorrow Never Dies as the advertising campaign, and also playing this video game where you had this somewhat blocky version of Pierce Brosnan there, but being like, oh, this is really interesting. This is really fun. What is this James Bond thing? I'd seen Goldfinger as like a 4 or 5-year-old. I don't know, but like that didn't leave as much of an impression on me as the experience of seeing this advertising campaign and playing the video game and suddenly connecting with who James Bond was.
Yeah, I mean, for me, there's a nostalgia factor. It's having played the game first. And then, I mean, even today, yes, something like, for example, like the Harry Potter game that came out a couple years ago. That's incredibly immersive and you feel like you're in the films, but it doesn't follow a film. So to play Goldeneye and then watch the film, you're like, as a young kid, you're mind blown. You're like, I am him. So that, of course, the nostalgia factor always puts Goldeneye up at number one for me when it comes to Brosnan. But there is something about Tomorrow Never Dies that is just, I don't want to say better, but I think you catch my drift. Even without saying it, it is just he's comfortable.
You can say better, because
I mean, there's more going on. There's more, there's a lot more, story there, and Michelle Yeoh is fantastic and all these different aspects of it. But let me ask you guys this. You both kind of touched in on a re-entry.
Yeah.
I think Ryan, with your dad, and David, you said the same. What was it about, whether it was Dalton or Moore? Because I know that even at different ages, you really don't see somebody say like, well, I watched the first Sean movie and I was like, eh, so it's
Yeah.
always they're watching all the Sean stuff. Maybe you lose them at Lazenby because he just did one. But what is it about Brosnan? So not even so much why did you leave or why did you pay a little less attention to Bond, but what is it about Brosnan where you were like, okay, something's going on here and I
Right.
need to pay attention to it?
I think I have a suspicion Ryan's answer is going to be very similar to mine in the fact that when I embraced the other Bonds, when I would consume a James Bond movie before Brosnan's movies, I was watching James Bond. I was watching actors playing the
Right.
role of James Bond, and I thoroughly enjoyed them. I felt like for the very first time, and I think a lot of this is why I asked the age question. This is because of where I was in my life. I felt like Brosnan embodied James Bond, the character. He
Mhm.
embodied all of the tropes that I loved. It's almost as if somebody took all of the experiences that I had with James Bond, blended it together, and had me literally like pick which ones I wanted. And they put it in a human being. And
Mm.
I didn't think I was watching Pierce Brosnan. I mean, of course I knew it was Pierce Brosnan, but I would get so pulled in to the character that this person was portraying, it didn't feel like an acting job. And that's why I said Tomorrow Never Dies is slightly better. To Ryan's point, I feel like Brosnan had a taste of embodying the character, but he wasn't
Right.
fully there. He was still reading the script and going through it. Tomorrow Never Dies, I felt like I was like literally in the third person watching, spying, and seeing this gentleman go through this incredible adventure for 2 hours and 20 minutes.
Mm.
Combine that with the fact that at that point in time, I too was kind of trying to find myself. I was trying to find out who I wanted to be and realized that as much as people think, oh, you're cosplaying as, James Bond, or you're
Right.
acting like Pierce Brosnan, not David Zaritsky, I do think that we are a sheer composite of all of our experiences. And the experience of Brosnan had the most impact, even more than Craig did. It had
Yeah.
the most impact on me in how I conducted my life, in how I acted around people, handled stressful situations. It was almost like a character handbook of how to be a man.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and what's interesting with that, David, is
Come
too,
on, that's good Boffo.
it's very good.
I don't know
It's
what that
very good. What's interesting about that too is at that time, you obviously were married. I know I would say both of your children were born at that point, right? 97,
correct.
98. So it isn't far-fetched to think you are kind of trying to reconnect with yourself. You know what I mean? Like you're a father,
That's a
you're a
great point.
husband, but you
You're
also
trying
are
to
like, but what makes me me?
Yeah,
Right.
you're trying to grasp on because what happens is whether you're married, Ryan just got engaged, congratulations, or you have a child, congratulations, Luke. What
Yep.
happens is, and they're all incredibly wonderful things, but a little piece of you gets shared. And
Yeah.
so the more pieces of you that get shared, if you become a president of a company or if you become a celebrity, more and more of your pieces are getting split apart like atoms. So you desperately are finding something to try to draw it back together cohesively.
Yeah.
Sometimes you do that in a characterization. And I did that with Bond.
Yeah. Let me ask you guys, do you ever find, so I did this a lot with Craig, or Craig, but do
Craig.
you ever find yourself emulating Bond almost to, and for us Brosnan, almost to kind of make a less enjoyable situation or task a little more enjoyable? Such as going into the office. You're like, well, if I dress like Brosnan, if I kind of focus on these mannerisms, it's kind of like, you know what, this is actually a little more interesting than something that could be a little stale, like work or whatever it may be.
I'll let Ryan go first since I've been yapping.
I did that a little bit more, I think, earlier on in my fandom. I definitely did, especially with Pierce Brosnan. There are a lot of moments where you can see, why does Ryan want a suit, and why is
Right.
Ryan excited about wearing a suit, it was Pierce Brosnan's Bond and the fantasy of being that character all the way. I had a gunmetal silver briefcase, kind of like the one that he had in Die Another Day with the diamonds in it. Like all these things that were preposterous for a person as young as I was at the time. But really excited about living in that, and that kind of set a standard for what I think elegance looks like. And I think Pierce Brosnan embodies that even today. As if you look at that today, he's just an effortlessly elegant person, and he has aged like fine wine. And that aspirational sense of projecting myself imaginatively into that experience was a big part of that. Like the fantasy of trying to be that. Though I think over time, and I think this is I would think David identifies with this, because I know David enough to know that he does, that in some ways, after a while of imitating, you find ways to inject more of yourself into it, and find the boundaries between what is an imaginative construct and then what is the part of that is really you, and then kind of lean into those facets. So I would say these days it feels less like me imaginatively pretending to be someone else. It feels like I've discovered a more authentic version of who I am in all of my life and those pieces. But absolutely, I mean, if you were to put me on a yacht today, the first thing I'm going to think of when we open the glass sliding door is Pierce Brosnan in that moment in Goldeneye that we've already discussed.
I just picture you standing at the door, just repeatedly doing it. What the hell is he doing? Like, who invited this guy?
100%. And I mean, if I were to show up in a party in black tie, I'm going to think about Pierce Brosnan walking into the party and Tomorrow Never Dies in black tie. Like, it's just going to happen.
So here's an interesting question, and it goes back to the age thing. So Ryan just said, David, that if he goes to a party in black tie, he's thinking of Bond or Brosnan. If you go to a party in black tie, and this might be a little different because we know you've got some of the actual, suits, you've got the GoldenEye suit or whatever it may be, or this dinner jacket or that. Is there a particular moment as Bond as you're getting ready or as you show up to this event, does it like trigger Brosnan, or is it Sean, or is it Craig, or like, do you have that same, or is that like a 90s kid thing for Ryan and I, or is it kind of like, no, Brosnan did it best and that's what I relate to most?
This probably dovetails from what Ryan was saying, but I think as time has gone on, as I've evolved, I've moved into the phase where those moments get smaller and smaller and smaller. So I wrote an article in 1997 about this watch. When I looked at this watch in a meeting, I would escape. I would think of the movie.
Yes.
Now, when I pick out this watch, it's just an appreciation of the watch. I'll have a moment where I remember it's Tomorrow Never Dies, but it is so quick and fast. And it's the same thing when I dress up in tuxedos. Like I'll pick out a tuxedo. I'll be like, oh, I'm going to choose the Skyfall one, or versus like the Dr. No one. So I'll have a fleeting glimpse in my head of the characterization and the moment from the movie, but it doesn't carry forward. Like it doesn't carry forward me dressing up. I'm thinking about like David Zaritsky. It's almost like when we meet Bond fans in social situations, all of the Bond stuff falls away very quickly, the discussions of Bond, and then you're just talking to people. And I think it's very much like that, where Brosnan sort of influenced me, my appreciation of these things, but I don't carry it too deeply forward.
So why do you think that shifted? Just because, I mean, and let's call a spade a spade. Obviously, the Bond experience has become very successful. So you're doing a lot of things where you're wearing, hosting Cue the Music or this event. So you're potentially wearing black tie more frequently than you did before. So just kind of, is it more so just it's a little bit more frequent? It's kind of losing its luster a little bit?
No, you know what it is? Quite the opposite. I think that the wonder of this all is that the lines of fantasy and reality have blurred so much with this wonderful hobby that I think it's all me, even though I'm sure it's not. But the lines are so blurred that I don't think about it as one or the other.
Yeah. So Ryan, let me ask you the same question with you and I obviously, I mean, I think the last time I wore a black tie was probably to Skyfall in concert 2 years ago or something. I mean,
Wow.
yeah, it's been a while. Do you have that kind of same, like, this is like your Casino Royale moment, or this is your Die Another Day martini at the bar moment, or is it kind of,
Ah,
you know?
it's tricky because I don't really I have dinner jackets now, which is a relatively recent thing. I used to have
Mhm.
one when I was singing a lot. I would perform in black tie a lot, but I I don't I don't know that I project myself into it in that way. I do think a lot about the Pierce Brosnan ensemble in Tomorrow Never Dies because that's kind of like my Grail black tie ensemble. The three-piece black tie that he wears that's Brioni is like very much me. But it's become more me. I think one thing that I have always tried to be very intentional about doing that skews this a little bit is that I always try to make sure that I'm blending a little bit of Bond with a little bit of me. So
Mm.
I would look, for example, I when I had a dinner jacket made for me, I was referencing Pierce Brosnan's peak lapel dinner jacket, but then I was doing additional details on that jacket that
That you
feel
like
that
personally.
that are very personal to
Yeah.
me. So
Right.
it feels like a synthesis in some ways of my love of the Brosnan aesthetic and this sort of 1930s throwback glamour that's very Hollywood, but is also something that is a little bit more me. And so I do have this moment where I put it on that I'm thinking, oh yeah, this is like I can go, especially when I'm taking it off at the end of the night. I am thinking about that scene in Tomorrow Never Dies where I'm like, I wish, man, I just had a bottle of vodka here, just here, so I can just sit back in the chair
Right.
and let the tie go and wait for someone to come through that door. Like that I have those moments, but it the beautiful thing, and one of the reasons that I think Pierce Brosnan is so dear to me is he's just kind of like he's just always with me, right? Like he's just kind of like
Mm.
always there somewhere, right? It's not it's kind of what David said. It's not like there's a delineation between
It's infused in
it's
you.
Right.
infused
Yeah.
and it feels like I don't know exactly what my experience of putting on a dinner jacket would be if I didn't have this. Like, would
Sure.
I? And it's so hard to separate. And and obviously Craig is as much my Bond as the Brosnan era is, but I'll be transparent. Uh, I just knew that when Craig was Bond, I was just never going to look like Daniel Craig's Bond. And so, as much as certain style elements I've been able to pull forward from the Daniel Craig years, I've been able to I mean, Brosnan is still kind of my guy in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Like, I look back at that and I feel like that sort of elegance is something that I connect to a little bit more in my personal style than Craig's more brawler brawler in a dinner
Yeah.
jacket energy.
I'll say Ryan sparked something in me, as he often does, where it with Brosnan, there is a delineation between Brosnan and Craig in my mind, because although I do like a lot of the Craig fashions, it's Brosnan's, and I'll go back to what you said, Luke, mannerisms. It's his
Yeah.
suaveness. It's the way he acts and handles himself in situations that I feel like is more my pattern and the way I act. I'm much less Craig and much more Brosnan as an individual, at least the way Bond
Sure.
is portrayed. So when I put on a piece of clothing, it's almost like in my mind, and this has become seamless. I don't actually imagine this, please, but it's almost like I'm shopping in Bond's closet and I've seen this catalog of movies that is basically like the shopping catalog. I've seen Brosnan wear that suit that I have hanging up in the closet. And I know that, instead of an angry young man in a catalog, it's been Brosnan who's worn that suit. So I can at
Right.
least get that in my mind and start to, as Ryan said, project that. But when it comes to being and my personality and acting and handling situations and trying to act cool, like that's all Brosnan. I took that
Yeah.
from actually it's Connery and Brosnan. It's a nice mix of those two.
Mhm.
Roger Moore's a little bit of humor. Dalton, maybe my hairline. I don't know. And Craig Craig, not much other than like the fashion.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, and it's a perfect segue too, because I was going to ask you, obviously with Craig there was a sartorial just explosion in availability and research, and there's basically anything he had on his body you could find out where it was from and how to buy it.
Mhm.
With Brosnan, not so much. A little bit more now. Things are getting, replicated or whatever it may be. Did that have any effect on, I mean, obviously you would try to emulate him. I mean, it's like, say he's wearing we'll say a dark gray, 3-button suit. At that point in time, would you just go and find a similar dark gray 3-button suit? Or were you trying to find out, like, I think I saw him in a magazine. I think it's a brand called Brioni. You know what I mean? Because now it's like, for me, it's something like the Sunspell Polo. I bring it up 40 times a day. That at that price point, I'm like, I don't want a navy polo. I want the Sunspell Polo. But with Brosnan, it's a lot easier to just be like, I'm going to replicate this because I don't really know what it is. But was it hard for you, especially with Ryan and I, or even David and whoever it may be? David, if you're trying to do it professionally and you're like, well, I want to wear that suit. And did you say, I need that suit? Or were you like, well, as long as it kind of looks like Brosnan? Could you
No,
feel like Bond unless it
believe,
was that suit?
believe it or not, we didn't start with Craig. We started looking for the correct thing way back in Tomorrow Never Dies. And we found
Okay.
it. I mean, we found the watch, we
Right.
found the jackets, we found the clothing, we found a lot of the pieces, but it wasn't until The World Is Not Enough when Eon woke up and said, holy crap, we need to tell people that it's Church's monk strap shoes. And we need to do an ad campaign around that. So they started to take the ties and the Turnbull things and all those wonderful things. And we started to do our research and to see
I knew
through
something was
all of the
coming out.
marks.
I think he's had those in his hands for like 20 minutes now.
No, 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 no. Hey,
15.
do me a favor. Don't call me out on that. How dare you? How dare you?
Hold on, let me write that down.
Guys,
I do have that. I do have the pen. I do have
Nice.
the pen.
Okay.
I'm
good.
just going to ask you guys not to jump to any conclusions here. All right. That's all I'm asking.
That they knocked that tree ornament off.
No, we could do that all night. But seriously, like it started then.
Can I still have my message?
It started then, and there weren't a lot of people finding the right things. Like back then, it was very unique and unusual. But that's when, like, The World Is Not Enough is when I started to swirl, and like everything I purchased for Bond had to be the right thing.
Yeah. That's that's extremely interesting. And you brought up a good point, because you even talked about Eon and advertising. This right behind me here, which we've all seen, is the ad from GoldenEye. But the actual watch in the ad is the automatic version. So they're immediately introducing this watch with the new Bond. I mean, I just actually posted maybe a few weeks ago my version of this. And I said, this is what this ad would have been if they actually posted the watch. The picture they used was of the watch in the film. So they're talking about Bond is back. He's a new Bond, GoldenEye, but it's not even the watch he wears. So to your point, David, it's like, even when Omega was advertising, they were like, well, this is it's the quartz version. Like, we'd rather have you come by the automatic. But to somebody who's trying to get the exact watch, they're not even trying to sell it to you. They're trying to get you to get the next one.
Yeah.
So it is interesting for you to bring up even just the marketing around it. It was not like it is now, where, of course, with social media, it's a lot easier. But with Brosnan, I mean, for me, I look back, and yes, of course, now James Bond Lifestyle, or David, anything you've done, or AJB, there's certain places to find it, but it's a lot more daunting to find what Brosnan actually wore versus
Did you guys,
what Craig wore.
well, you're about the same age, right? Give or take.
Yeah.
I'm a little older, but yeah. Just a few years.
He looks younger, though. He looks younger.
He looks good. But a quick question I had on that. So do you two, during the Brosnan era, do you remember the publicity? the promotion, the standees, all that stuff?
1,000%. So for me, I was an internet savvy young kid. So
I can imagine.
So the world is not enough being my awakening door into it. That was a lot of print media, but I remember that all very vividly. But what I remember is getting online and finding the Bond communities that existed at the time. It was like 007 Forever and all these websites that
mi6.co.uk
MI6,
or whatever that one is.
MI6 came a little bit later in some ways, but like
Yeah.
there was an early cluster of websites where it was then Bond 18 and you were getting the Bond 19, you were getting the news stories. And I remember when the teaser poster first dropped for
Oh, yeah.
Girl, and I had to download it on the website, and it was like bit by bit, you know, like it popped up. I was paying attention to every single bit of piece of that. Like that when the news dropped that they were going to feature the Millennium Dome, I was reading about that and all these pieces that from The World Is Not Enough on, I was kind of obsessively plugged into that. So I remember that acutely. I mean, by the time Die Another Day came out and I was like downloading the QuickTime files on my computer, I can't tell you how many times I had rewatched the Die Another Day trailers before I had walked into the theaters.
I asked that, and Luke, I want to hear about your experience too, because I have a theory that Brosnan made young men old souls. And what I mean by that in the most complimentary way is that it was able to ferret and find the individuals like yourselves that are going to be connoisseurs of style, fashion, food, libations, all these things. But I mean, Brosnan really, I think, was part of the attraction of that. And there were so many different campaigns to do that. But Luke, did you find something similar, or were you kind of like a wash adrift?
No, I can recollect a lot of it. I mean, and of course it was a lot less like I don't want to say anything bad about it, but it was like the marketing now is like a little bit more elegant, where back then it was like Coke cans, 7-Up can, you know what I mean? It was like anywhere. But at the same time, I prefer it to be like, I like seeing Bond get its, get its like day in the sun. Like I think it should be everywhere. But I always tell people the story. I remember seeing the diecast cars for sale at the airport. For Die Another Day. You know, I remember literally, you know, it's very different from now. But yeah, I remember their marketing. And I think you're right too. Obviously, with us being 90s kids, late 80s kids, it's you're introduced to Pierce. But I think it is something about Pierce that made you say, like, I need more of this. And I don't know when it's coming. So I'm gonna go backwards and watch these films from the 60s and 70s. And
It's
then
like a
you
thirst
are
for sophistication. Like you guys, and you can't say this and still eat humble pie, but I can. You guys are very sophisticated, not just for your age, but just in general, like if you comparatively. And I think a lot of that Brosnan bred, as horrific as that sounds, in us, to this innate curiosity to learn more about the pomp and circumstance that a gentleman spy would find out about, as opposed to Daniel Craig, who's like, he'll mow people down with a machine gun. But I don't know if I want to learn etiquette lessons from Daniel Craig's James Bond. That's my opinion.
I agree with that. And thank you for saying that. Yeah, Ryan, go ahead.
I think David's onto something that I connect with very strongly. And I think one of the reasons I connected with Pierce Brosnan as a hero, there were other heroes I liked a lot, you know, Indiana Jones and all these other major figures growing up that I loved. But Pierce Brosnan's Bond is like the gentleman Bond. Like, yeah, you could look at Roger Moore, but Roger Moore is like a parody of a gentleman Bond. Like he's a joke, and I love that joke, and I can even participate imaginatively in the fantasy of that joke to a point. But there's a reason Roger Moore isn't necessarily a fantasy figure in the way that Pierce Brosnan was in terms of a model, because Pierce Brosnan embodies that fantasy a little bit more sincerely, and that made him a pretty unique figure in the action landscape of the 90s when you're coming out of the 80s, which is Sylvester Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger, and this machismo that is so rough that there's not a lot of space for the elegance that Bond brings. And Pierce Brosnan's Bond is still tough. He's still credible. He's still an assassin. He has his darker moments, but there's this gentlemanliness to the character that you don't see a lot in the movies of the preceding era. And it was something that was much more established in the eras before. You know, you can think of Cary Grant and that ilk of an elegant man who was still kind of viewed as a man of strength and things like that. And Pierce Brosnan kind of brings that back. And
Sure.
as someone who was a kid, I mean, I can tell you this, before I liked James Bond, I was like 4 years old playing with my neighbor, pretending like I was taking her out on a date and we were having champagne together. Like this is
You're
the kind
ruined.
this is the kind of kid that I was. And I saw Pierce Brosnan and I was like, oh, this unites so much of what I would want to be. This is a guy who is.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
It is really, he's aspirational, I think, in a way that people struggle to find Roger Moore's Bond aspirational, or even Timothy Dalton's Bond aspirational. And I think Timothy Dalton's Bond has some very aspirational aspects. He's a very capable person, but Brosnan brings the fantasy, the glamour. He's the person who, when they walk into the room, they kind of own the room. And Timothy Dalton's Bond is not that guy.
Dalton's not a template to which you want to replicate for yourself. And you have to think about that. Like when you leave the movie, it's really fun, especially nowadays. I saw Living Daylights because I got that key ring and I'm like, oh, I feel like watching Living Daylights. And I had so much fun watching Dalton be Dalton, but I never once walked away and said, well, I love the way he did this. Brosnan becomes like a study. And I will say, you can even see it today as Daniel Craig has aged and Brosnan has aged. The person that I would most want to have a drink with or a night out in the town, just to have a conversation, is Brosnan 10 times over. And it's because I would be in a gentleman's presence and everybody sees him in this gentlemanly zone, as opposed to Daniel Craig he's aging. He's an aging actor. Whereas Pierce Brosnan is still this gentleman,
heartthrob
in general.
And he's also warm. I think that's one of the nice things about Pierce Brosnan, both as a person, as
I've never touched him. What do you know?
I wish.
But Pierce Brosnan's Bond seems like he's the kind of guy who really would go out for a few pints with Tanner after work, right? Like he has workplace friends, whereas Daniel Craig's Bond doesn't seem like he really has friends. Like he has acquaintances. He has people he like.
Spectre, he's sitting in his house, unpacked in a chair, just waiting for nobody to ring the doorbell.
No. You're right. I think Daniel Craig's version is probably almost hyper realistic to what an actual assassin is probably
and
like.
Sad and a lack of joy. To your point, Luke, that's the other thing that I love about Brosnan and still do, is when I watch his movies, I feel like that is a guy who is enjoying being James Bond. And I don't mean the actor. I mean, James Bond loves being James Bond.
Right.
He's loving macking on women. He loving getting over on the bad guy. He's loving winning. He's loving losing. Like he's loving it.
He is adoring it. The moment that I just crystallizes that the most, I have to express it because it is the quintessential Brosnan joy moment, is when he's in the back of the car in Tomorrow Never Dies and he just like laughs when he hits
That's a great one.
He's so excited.
He's like
nobody truly, I don't think anybody did the Q scenes better than Brosnan. I think it's even like, but you know what? And this is another mannerism in The World Is Not Enough, when he gets his coat stuck in the what's his face gets his coat stuck in there, and he just very subtly pulls, just like he's always freaking on. He's always on. But the way Brosnan does it, it's like the most like elegant, like just like he's the king of cool. He really is. I want to ask you guys this because we've touched on this a few times, but do you think that what made Brosnan so good is once Tomorrow Never Dies came, he actually started allowing Pierce Brosnan to kind of bleed through into Bond. Like, people say he was born to play Bond, and I believe that. Like, I think he was an incredible choice. But do you actually think that the second he got comfortable, he was like, you know what? I think if I bring a little bit more of me into this, it's going to be even better. Do you feel that he did that in Tomorrow Never Dies?
I think that's hard to deny because, if we fall back on what we just said about Pierce Brosnan being still the coolest just guy in general. Yes, I think you're right, because even if I use this almost like a scientific petri dish and go back to Connery, I think Connery was at his best when Connery was outside of the Dr. No, like almost had the same thing of the freshman year.
Mm,
And once he got into his sophomore outings and you saw the Connery bleed through into the Bond, you got those very comfortable moments. There's a wryness, if I could use that word, to their delivery, both Connery and Brosnan, that I see the actors. It's different when you have Daniel Craig bleed through in No Time to Die, when he goes, "That's not good," or
yeah,
like
yeah,
he's
yeah.
talking to Blofeld, and you basically see Daniel Craig in the Daniel Craig interviews with like Colbert, and it's jolting. Like, it
Yeah,
takes you out of the movie. Whereas Brosnan, you're like, this guy is Bond. And
yeah,
therefore, when I see the actor, I see the character, and they're seamless.
yeah. Ryan,
My
you
opinion.
touched on, yeah. No, I agree. And Ryan, you touched on this too about your father. So my dad was, similar to David, executive. He didn't have a ton of time, and when he did, if I even remotely tried to watch a movie with him, that wasn't gonna last very long. He's falling asleep. But a lot of times people would say my dad reminded them of Pierce Brosnan. He looks nothing like Pierce Brosnan, but I would start to try and pay attention, and this was 15, 20 years ago. But then eventually I'd notice, I was like, you know what? Because he did wear a suit every day, and he did dress incredibly well. And it wasn't just that, it was some mannerisms. He kind of like literal, like Pierce Brosnan and Bob Taggart had similar mannerisms. And there is something to be said about that too. And David, to your point, it's like those mannerisms are mannerisms you want to emulate, like as a son. Where with Daniel Craig, it's kind of like, yeah, I want to, if you say to like a woman, I want to be like James Bond. If they immediately think of Daniel Craig, they're probably like, I want you to treat me like
Yeah. By the way,
that.
your father, who I could say objectively, since I'm not his son, your father, when I first met him, I actually thought he had a ton of Bond attributes. First of all, very good
Really?
looking guy, just
Thank you.
visually very, very good looking guy. The way he stood at the
Yeah.
time, like
Very
very like
upright.
shoulders back type of like Bond type thing. Even the
Yeah.
way he moved, he had like a certain cat-like quality to him that I see a lot of my favorite Bonds do. But your father
Yeah.
definitely embodied a
Yeah. Thanks
lot
for
of
saying that.
characteristics of
Yeah.
Bond,
He was a
probably
gentleman's
means
gentleman.
which probably means you do as well.
Sure. Sure. Yeah. I try to emulate both of those gentlemen for sure. Yeah.
Let's
But
have a
Ryan, I
tearful
mean,
moment.
done. So Ryan,
Yeah.
but you touched on this a similar experience with your dad. Did that, like, now that we're sitting here talking about Brosnan in 2025, almost 2026, does that also kind of say, well, you know what? Like, my dad liked Brosnan. My dad and I did X, Y, and Z with Brosnan. Does that kind of bring in, yes, a nostalgia, obviously, but almost like it's a little more important to you to emulate or think of Bond or Brosnan more frequently than anybody else just because of that connection?
Yes. I mean, it was so formative. I mean, I want to be honest. My dad was a Connery evangelist, so when I think
Okay.
of my dad, it's a lot of him. He was excited to show me Brosnan, but he was like, before you see anything, we're gonna sit down and watch my favorite Connery Bond movie.
Right.
So my the joy that I saw in my father was Connery Bond. It was
Mm,
like he was a kid at a candy shop showing me You Only Live Twice and Thunderball, which were the first two I was forced to watch in the gauntlet of Connery VHS viewings that then unfolded from that point on. But that is what I think of a little bit. But I mean, there is a level of attachment that I have because I think visually very much of Pierce Brosnan's style, the three-piece, the 3-button suits and things like that, being very much my father. It was when I first got my suit, and my dad took me out to get my first suit for prom or whatever it was I was doing at the time. I don't remember what it was. You know, it was the 3-button suit in that Brosnan style. There is so much about where my dad was in his life as kind of the same age as Brosnan, effectively, that I link the two a little bit in my mind as being both on a similar trajectory, and that obviously leaves quite an impression on a young boy that I can't quite escape. And obviously, you know, you have fond memories of going to see The World Is Not Enough with your father, and him taking you out to see that Bond movie, and what that experience feels like, and sitting in seats, and yeah, I mean, it's hard. I have to say, it's hard for me to be objective about Brosnan in a way that it's easier for me to be more objective about the other Bonds. And I don't want to be objective about Brosnan.
I was going to say, that's telling.
Yeah.
Why be objective?
Why be objective? I don't need to. I think, but there is a very, regardless of what I think about the movies of his run, there is something just deeply in me that loves the Brosnan Bond, and has such a deep kinship to that is built into those family connections and that relationship that I had with my father.
By the way, I love how you mentioned the suitings, because I have a confession to make, that out of all the different suits that I've worn, the Tom Ford ones, the Skyfall,
I know where this is going,
all that stuff, the most positive comments when I was in London last, by far, were around the 3-piece GoldenEye anniversary suit that Tim Everest made for me, because, and this was like just people that saw me on stage. They weren't at the party. They weren't in the unveiling. They didn't even know who made it. They just said that 3-piece suit, David, looked the shit on you. Like, you look amazing.
I agree.
You. And if it can look really good on a 5'8.5", you know, silver-haired old man,
Fox,
that's the type of, why, thank you. That's the type of thing that we can embrace, and that's a Brosnan thing.
Yeah,
I totally agree. I think Brosnan's style, and I want to give credit to people like Matt Spazer, who has always been an evangelist.
I was literally just going to bring his ass up too.
No, God. Don't.
Yeah, we gotta. I'll cut this out.
Okay. Well, but I mean, he's been so passionate about Brosnan's style. He's another person of our generation, and I do want to say that if those suits hold up, he looks consistently elegant. And I want to draw a distinction. Craig looks cool. Brosnan looks elegant a lot of the time.
Ooh, I like that.
There is a very
Spazer will adore this section of the video for sure.
Believe me, sometimes I want to look cool. I don't ever think that I will ever be cool in my life, but sometimes I want to look cool. But I a lot of times I gravitate towards looking elegant, and it's very easy to look at those films and look at those Brioni suits, like that 3-piece GoldenEye suit that you had recreated, and just be like, that's how a suit should be. Like, that's a good suit. And I think he embodied a style that was very elegant and very classic. And I've actually been trying to return to it myself a little bit over the past.
You're doing it.
I've been doing it. I've been wearing more Brosnan-esque ties. I've been having fun. He's the king of cool statement ties.
You got to get that Cuba floral shirt, man. What are you doing?
I do have to get the Cuba floral shirt. That is a cool shirt. The real shirt is really quite cool. But
only he could pull that off. Craig would look like an idiot in that.
By the way, Luke, I have to ask the host a question. Because very recently, for a third time, you purchased the GoldenEye Omega watch.
Now, it is the third time. Yeah.
Based on this conversation, was it did you buy the watch because it was a lost it, found it, lost it, found it, I need to have it? Or like how much did Brosnan's influence on you bear weight in repurchasing that watch?
Oh, it's 1,000,000%, because I told my wife that well, I guess I can call her Bran, you both know her. I told her that I needed to have that watch back before the anniversary of Goldeneye. I was like, to me, it's like sacrilege to have had it twice and get rid of it. And it, you know what? It's that watch got me into watches. It got me into Bond. But it does not discount at all who was wearing the watch. You know, he wore that watch and you saw it. I mean, I just picture him in Goldeneye with like the AK and you see it hanging there and you're just like,
Yeah.
this thing is freaking gorgeous and it fits him so damn well. And it is, you know what it's like, and when you watch the Craig films, yeah, he's an Aquaterra guy. He's the No Time to Die Seamaster. That is Brosnan's watch. Whether it's automatic, quartz, whatever, that design, it's just Brosnan. You know, we see Daniel Craig wear it a little bit in Casino Royale. Craig, his version of it, the automatic, but yeah, I mean, it is very seriously tied to the
Ryan's
fact
jumping
that
through the
Brosnan's
screen.
watch.
That means he wants
I
to
know,
say
I can see it.
I'm a watch guy, and I
Are you
think
gonna give me shit because I'm not wearing it in this video?
yeah, I can't believe you're not wearing it. That is a
What?
tragedy. That is
What the hell is? Oh, it's a moon swatch. It's a
Reveal.
swatch, one of those plastic swatches.
You saw it here first. No way, man. This is the real deal. David,
that is so stunning. We'll talk about that. But
off camera.
I think one of my gripes, and I think about the Craig era, and the Craig era has some lovely watches. The No Time to Die is one of the coolest watches in the entire series.
Not for $11,300 now.
Well,
Thank you very much.
We'll put the retail aside. What I love about the Brosnan Seamaster is that it was the consistent Seamaster. That was the watch. That was his watch, and it was the watch he wore film after film. I would have loved it if, say, the Planet Ocean had just become the
Craig's
one
watch.
model. Craig's watch. He wore it film after
I'm
film.
going to jump in here real quick, not to cut you off, but anybody watching, Ryan does know that it was quartz and automatic. He's talking about just the fact that it's the Diver 300. No. He didn't say anything wrong, but I don't want any comments. He didn't wear the same watch. You all know what Ryan's saying. Don't jump on his.
And the people that are watching 58 minutes into this conversation, you know they're picky.
Yeah, Kyle Barbeau, maybe.
Brosnan actually wore different references. Yes, I understand that.
Kyle doesn't watch your videos, by the way. So
he does. He's been texting me every video, like 20 minutes in, being like, and I don't watch your videos. I don't think he does. I think he just fast forwards and he's like,
he gets an excerpt and then he goes, that time at 3 minutes in.
Yeah.
Anyway, Ryan, finish your thought because it was a good one.
Yeah, sorry for cutting you off. I just want to make sure you didn't get lampooned by people.
My point is just that watch became famous because of Brosnan and is consistent because of Brosnan. And I wish Craig had been able to really get his watch in that same way. He got a constellation of fantastic watches instead, but I think there's a beauty in iconography, and iconography requires repetition to establish it.
Well, you know what? And I think that's why people refer to it as the Bond watch. I think consistency was key. We get that he wore a Rolex. We get that there was a Gruen and a Tag and a Breitling and a shit ton of Seikos. But when you think of the Bond watch, one of them has been worn film after film after film after film.
Yeah.
What do you got, David? It's a watch, I'm assuming.
No, I don't.
What is it?
Come
on, let's see.
It's going to be a jump scare of like
I'm saving it for the. Is this the end of the video?
No, I've got a couple more questions. I can't. It's very difficult to just let you guys go. So, touching on something like the watch, and David, you obviously talked about marketing. Do you think once Brosnan was cast And now, and we touched on this too. Yes, once Craig got in, it was easier to sartorially replicate and blah blah blah. But do you think it was easier for people in the 90s to relate to Brosnan as Bond than it may have been? Like, if somebody in the 80s, late 70s is watching Roger Moore, do you think somebody in the 90s
Oh,
like, you
yeah.
know what, I can do this, but Roger Moore, you're like, I don't
Yeah.
think I can do that.
Oh, no, totally, totally. I mean, Roger Moore was this sign of the 70s and, early 80s. The way he looked, right? The way he wore things. But Brosnan definitely looks like a 90s child
Yeah.
in the sense
But
that
how
even the
frequently
hair.
do you, for sure, but how frequently do you think in the 70s some businessman was like, I want to wear that exact outfit? Do you feel like people probably
Um,
were able to do it more with Brosnan than Roger,
I do think that, yeah.
just
I mean,
based on the actor?
just from a little bit of experience of that time. I mean, I was obviously much younger, but there was a time in the 60s where everybody was trying to just dress like James Bond. Adults, children, they
Mhm.
have bathing suits, clothes. I have a lot of them in my collection of these old things from the 60s. Like everybody was trying to emulate. It did get doused during the Roger Moore era.
Yeah, it wasn't
It got really quiet.
sartorially, yeah, it wasn't, that, like, let's be
No.
real, that
But now,
wasn't
in
the
fact,
time.
I think more people use Roger Moore as a template today to dress than they did back in the 70s.
Kyle Barbeau and How to Act.
It's okay.
And
Say whatever you want. He's not going to watch this.
no, he's not. If he does, Kyle, I'll send you $100.
I won't. I mean,
David will split it with me.
I love a lot of Roger outfits. I think it's great, but you have to remember that Roger Moore's Bond kind of goes in the opposite direction of what the series was toying with at one point, which is like they were going to let Lazenby have like long, shaggy, like late 60s hair at one point and things like that. And Roger Moore has his concessions to the times. He has his bell bottoms and things like that, but he generally goes in a more conservative, increasingly like classically British style that wasn't, I mean, I wasn't there, but I've seen a lot of, 70s and 80s media. Wasn't, he's not dressing like Duran Duran, right? Like he's not like on the cutting edge of cool, fashionable style as
What
far
about
as
the tracksuit?
But
What about the tracksuit?
But the core was different. I mean, I don't want to, yes, all the things you're saying are absolutely true, but the core of why men dress certain ways, like in the 60s, men were dressing like Bond with a lot of these offerings because quite frankly, that was masculinity. That was the definition of masculinity that they were trying to capture. That was completely lost during the 70s and 80s and even early 90s. It has sprung back in a big way. And now a lot of our audience that follows the Bond lifestyle, they're now gripping onto that nowadays. It was kind of a lost art form. And by the way, a lot of people, Luke and I have done a whole video on this, define masculinity as violence, as something negative, whereas I think it's been turned happily into the direction of not being that. Masculinity can be many other things, but that's a video for a different day.
That was a fun one and controversial, as we knew it would be.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
We were petitioned for that. They saw right through me.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Once an ad man, an ad man's an ad man, an ad man. Jesus. Is there a particular Brosnan moment that stands out as something that you flat out know? Like every time you do something, you're like, I flat out took this from Brosnan, but it's stuck with me for all these years. I will tell you, I do this, like, Tomorrow Never Dies,
Ugh.
World Is Not Enough, whatever. I do that.
I have the worst.
I would love more than ever to whip an X-ray across the room. I would love to do that. But is there something that you're like, I ripped this off from Brosnan, and yet somehow it's stuck with me for all these years?
I have a terrible one. You have a cool one. The nose thing is cool. I use an inordinate amount of times a day. It's a bit of a minefield out there. Constantly. And I mean constantly about the stupidest things, even if like I've just gone poop and I flushed and Danielle's about to go in the bathroom, I'll turn to her and I'll go, it's a bit of a minefield out there. Like to
Is
tell
this
her,
100% real?
no, this is 100% real. And she's sick of it. I'm pretty sure my job is sick of it.
Of
But
course.
I use it over, and all I do is I picture Brosnan looking out across in the beginning of a pretty horrific Brosnan Bond film and going, it's a bit of a minefield out there. The other one I use a lot is, what's the point of living if you can't feel alive?
Oh yeah,
Right.
that one.
And he
That
says it
one.
like that. And he
I wish I did cool things.
always says it like that.
I do stupid Brosnan stuff. What do you got, Ryan?
Well, I would have to think about which Brosnan quotes get the most play. The way he delivers lines makes them so fun to say, even when he's said some of the worst lines. Like I will say, what is it? Time to face gravity more than I would. Yeah. But I think one thing I do, I was trying to think, Luke, what I do physically that I've taken from Brosnan, and I realized just in this conversation, this is the first time I realized it. There's a specific Brosnan thing he does when he's kind of like quickly jaunting upstairs. Like if you think of that moment in Goldeneye when he's at like the Coliseum area and he's going to go look at like Xenia get on the boat with the captain. He kind of just like jaunty, like quick hop run upstairs.
Yeah.
I think I try to do that. Yeah. I think I try in my mind. I don't know how it looks.
He does it in Tomorrow Never Dies in the newspaper scene when with the satellite, like when he's like running around and stuff like that. He kind of takes the steps like 3 steps at a time. Exactly. And even I will say this, I think I do run a mix of Bond and Ethan Hunt. Like that, like
the Brosnan run is legendary. It's just I will also try to do the pain face on different occasions. I think now if I actually think about it, the Brosnan pain face is
it's the same if you've taken like heroin and you get the like little grindies going, like doing
Ride the Dragon.
Here's
wow. Can we isolate that and use that as our ringtone?
Yeah.
I want Ryan going.
I'll use it as a promo for the video. I'll be like, why did Ryan say this? Here's one of mine. And you know what it is? It's this one. Die Another Day Airplane.
I thought you were doing the King, the money.
No. There's that one, and then there's this one I don't use, but this will be ingrained in my brain forever. And I just talked about this when I was a kid and dogpiling people was like all the rage. I was at the bottom of a dog pile with all my friends, and I kept saying, like, get off, I can't breathe. For years, they'd be like, I can't breathe. And I was like, you effers, watch Goldeneye. The captain says it. I didn't say it like that. Years went by, and I made my friends watch it, and they were like, oh, shit. Yeah, maybe you didn't say it that way. I mean, they would tease the shit out of me. Like
he was
like,
an admiral, by the way.
Whatever he was an idiot.
Your fan base is going to correct you in a really negative way. It's an admiral.
Bring it on. What else is new?
By the way, do you think it's a coincidence that Ryan's wonderfully beautiful fiance, Mackenzie, looks exactly like the woman that Bond is brushing up on his Danish in Oxford? I mean, she is the spitting image of that actress.
I don't think it's a coincidence at all.
So she will immediately Google that picture. So
congratulations. No, I don't think it's a coincidence at all.
I think he did that like on his hunt for her.
Yeah.
Like he was like swipe.
I just picture them like they're
perfect.
Perfect.
That's the one.
They're after their first session.
Yeah.
He was probably like, hold on, don't move. Just like, yeah, she fits the bill. Okay. No. Put the blanket like this a little bit. Do me a favor. Have somebody call me.
That's a tough scene to do because that blanket had to be
there in an hour,
right over her buttock.
Yeah, barely.
Yeah. Well, gentlemen, thank you for appreciate you coming today.
That's it. Now show us what you got. What did you go grab? I want to see it.
I was gonna do this. You're ruining it because you were gonna say goodbye, and then I was gonna go. See you back at the lodge.
Oh, I do say that one a lot. I say that one a lot.
These are the glasses. These are exactly like this was a hunt in The World Is Not Enough, and there was a huge promotion for these sunglasses, and like everybody was trying to find them. Now they're like worth like $50,000, but these are the See You Back at the Lodge.
Oh, good. Now I know what to steal next time I'm at your house.
Oh, wow. You know which sunglasses I want while we're on the topic? I'm just going to arbitrarily throw this out and just steal the agenda from Luke right now. If somebody can point me to the GoldenEye Persols that he's wearing when he's in Cuba.
They're hard to find.
They are very hard to find. I would love those.
I have something similar.
They're really hard to find.
Of course.
David, David's got this shit. You've seen it.
I know.
I thought you were going to say you wanted Zoran sunglasses. I was like, David has those too, and he's itching to give them away.
This and more on the Bond Experience.
Thank you guys for watching.
Oh,
Ryan, David, I love you.
Love you too.
Thank you. My pleasure. Love you guys.